Joining me now from California to discuss the growing threat from the terror group in the aftermath of this week's terror attacks in Turkey and Bangladesh and last month's massacre in Orlando is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Devin Nunes. Mr. Chairman, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
It's great to be here with you, Shannon. Thank you.
I want to get your reaction, what you can tell us about the intelligence that's being gathered both on Bangladesh and on Istanbul. And this morning we're getting reports as well of 2 bombings in Baghdad, ISIS claiming responsibility there, 90 or more believed dead at this point. What can you tell us?
Well, this is really the plan of radical jihad. ISIS and al-Qaeda continue to grow. You're going to continue to see these attacks around the globe. It's what the intelligence community has been warning about very clearly. As it relates to Bangladesh, this has long been on our radar for actually several years. In fact, just this past week, we had one of the subcommittee chairmen from the House Intelligence Committee, Mr. Frank Lobiondo from New Jersey, was there actually the day before the attack, trying to work with the Bangladesh government to increase our counterterrorism cooperation with the Bangladesh government, because we knew that ISIS and al-Qaeda were growing there. I think the Bangladesh government has a long way to go, very populous country, 170 million people, kind of put into an area the size of Iowa. I think most Americans would understand how many people that would be. Iowa, I think, is around 4 million people. Bangladesh, 170 million in the same area. So that's an area that's just going to continue to, I think, grow with people who are willing to blow themselves up to kill others. This attack was specifically targeted Westerners. And I think if you see the 20 or so Westerners that were killed, including, unfortunately, 1 American. Istanbul, we can go into Istanbul, but that investigation's ongoing. Clearly looks like it's tied to ISIS, but we'll know more as we continue to work with the Turkish authorities and Turkish intelligence members. Baghdad, the bombings this morning, I think this is going to be what we'll continue to see in Iraq, especially as if you consider that Iran continues to put its influence over Baghdad. You saw with this recent take of Fallujah, heavy Iranian involvement. I think it's probably going to make the problem worse in the long run.
CIA Director John Brennan also this week talked about the fact that, of course, the U.S. is leading the coalition against ISIS in both Iraq and Syria. He added this as well.
It would be surprising to me that ISIL is not trying to hit us, both in the region as well as in our homeland. If anybody here believes that the U.S. homeland is hermetically sealed and that the Daesh or ISIL would not consider that, I think I would guard against that.
Mr. Chairman, what's your best assessment about the current threat to the U.S. homeland?
Well, I'm glad that the CIA director has taken a sober look at this. We've long been saying from the Intelligence Committee that it appears to us that ISIS and al-Qaeda are both growing. And so when you look at the potential for an attack in the United States, what I'm afraid of is that these attacks, like you saw in Orlando, like you saw in San Bernardino, are going to become the norm. And about, I guess it was about 2 years ago, the FBI came before us at the committee and said very clearly that they were concerned about radicalization of jihadists over the internet. They talked about the inability of our intelligence services to be able to track people because they were going into these chat rooms that are encrypted. And so I think it's no secret that Americans know now that there's investigations going on in 50 states. 4th of July clearly brings up concerns because you have a high number of Americans that are going to get together, enjoy fireworks, and enjoy friends and family. But I think also the American people are resilient. They know now it's more important than ever that if you see something, to call the local authorities and report it so it can be investigated.
To the point of whether we're defeating ISIS, President Obama this week said they're going to be on the run, they're going to have to hide, they will be defeated, and he added this as well.
We will not rest until we have dismantled these networks of hate that had an impact on the entire civilized world.
And of course that comes at the same time as we played a little bit earlier from Director Brennan saying we still have a ways to go before we're able to say we've actually made significant progress against ISIS. Are you confident in the administration's current plans for handling or defeating?
Well, I just wish that the rhetoric that the president used actually matched the action. So there continues to be no strategy to deal with Iraq and Syria and North Africa, Bangladesh. And if you look at the spread of jihadism from Morocco to the Philippines, it continues to grow. This is the President of the United States who said that al-Qaeda was on the run. Al-Qaeda then morphed into ISIS, and it's important for people to understand those connections. So to only have a plan in Iraq and Syria to try to deal with ISIS, that's not going to solve the problem. I look at this as, and I'll just kind of outline just a very brief solution, but there's kind of three pillars that have to be dealt with. You've got a North Africa problem, and I think you've got to bring NATO into that, Southern Europe into that, because that's an area where you have a lot of refugees that are crossing over from North Africa into Europe, not to mention that a lot of fighter flow and weapons flows are going from North Africa into Iraq and Syria. And remember, this was primarily because of the destabilization of Libya. The second pillar, I would say, is Iraq and Syria. Got to be dealt with. Currently, right now, having Iranian-backed militias go into Sunni areas to clear out cities like Fallujah, I think is a strategic mistake. And third, you've got the situation in Afghanistan, where the president continues to say that he's going to take troops out, which is giving credibility to the Taliban and other bad actors within that region to go out and do recruitment, saying that, look, the Americans are leaving, you better join us now, or we're going to come and get you. So those are just three simple pillars that need to be dealt with clearly and strategically, all working together, that ultimately would begin to get us on a path towards some type of plan to actually defeat radical jihadism, which is growing, spreading, and going to be a generational war.
The Pentagon is touting the fact that it has taken away, the coalition has, a lot of territory from ISIS. It points to the fact that it's taken about 45% of the territory it controlled at its peak in Iraq, taken about 20% of what it occupied in Syria. This week, Special Envoy Brett McGurk said before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that morale is low for ISIS fighters. They're running away from things. They're running away from other Iraqi forces. But at the same time, he acknowledged that there are people who are able to be inspired, you know, whether directed or not, but inspired, as you mentioned. Here's a bit about what he said about those who don't even need direct contact to get the motivation they need.
Any deranged individual that wants to commit a crime can suddenly fly the banner of ISIL and get an international headline. And they recognize this, and they're trying to inspire it. So I think the risk of that is something that is very much with us, will be with us for a long time.
How do we get at that, Chairman? How do we get at that issue of inspiration by somebody who's alone in a chat room, as you said, miles away?
Well, I'd also be careful of doing victory laps. There's a lot of victory laps being done because people are talking about the percentage of land in Iraq and Syria that's somehow now not part of under ISIS control. Look, at this point, a lot of that's not under anyone's control except for probably the Kurdish area. And like I said, this is not, when you look at ISIS as a problem, if you're only looking at Iraq and Syria like this administration is trying to do, you haven't even identified the problem or the problem set. I mean, ISIS just conducted a massive attack in Bangladesh. They just conducted an attack in Orlando. So you know, to try to say that somehow we're winning this right now, I think is just far-fetched. And that's why I tried to outline just kind of the basis of a plan that I hope the presidential candidate will begin to talk about. How ultimately do we go out and build a strategic plan that identifies the enemy and begins to take the fight to this enemy, because I'm afraid that these attacks are going to become the norm globally. I mean, if you look at now there are just up in a year and a half, ISIS has gone from 20, 30 attacks in a month up to about 100 attacks in a month with suicide bombers and other improvised explosive devices. This is very destabilizing globally, and it's got to be It's got to be the United States working with our NATO allies, our Arab allies, and anyone else who wants to come to the fight. If not, we're going to just continue to see this happen, and I don't think any of us globally want to see that.
You talk about identifying the enemy, so I want to touch on a conversation that's been ongoing about the administration, whether they understand this